welcome. Yeah, that theme music, that intro, it's a little bit different. It isn't 5 minutes. Nope, it's time for season 4 of the Car Biz Chronicles. I got to tell you, I love doing the Chronicles because in previous years, it gave me the chance to get out and travel and speak with folks. For the first 2 seasons last year, given our situation, we adjusted. We did it all online like this. And now I'm kind of into this because it can give me the opportunity to have guests like I'm having today who I wouldn't actually have a chance in most cases to be sitting next to. And so it's really awesome. So what is this season going to be all about? Well, this season is going to be all about what I am going to call the Culture Club, okay? Season 4, Car Biz Chronicles, the Culture Club, where I want to talk about culture. I want to talk about how you do it, what you do with it, and I want to also maybe even speak to what's difficult about it. So is the best way I can say it is we're going to open up the discussion today, hitting leadoff, and I couldn't have found a better leadoff hitter for this year's Chronicles. Whit, Norrad. Whit, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you, Sean?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Whit, I see a lot of what you post on LinkedIn. I love what you do there. I know you work for a company very sort of immersed in the concept of culture. So we're going to do the same way we're going to do all season. We're going to ask the question, Whit, what does the word culture mean to you?
I thought about this before we chatted, since you were so gracious to sort of throw it out there as to warn me almost. And I thought about what it meant actually when I was younger, rather than what it meant in the concept of culture now, where if you say culture now, I think very business minded, very client minded. But if we peel back the layers a little bit, it really looks a little bit more like it's simply a set of values and how those values are demonstrated. So if I were to think about being 10 years old and you said, what is culture? I would say, oh, that's your ethnic background and what behaviors that you do or that have been passed on to you and demonstrated to you. And if we take that out of scope a little bit, that's exactly what it is in a business sense still. We have a shared set of values, good, bad, ugly, that everybody within a certain community, whether that is a dealership, whether that is a business or a family, or even a gym environment, has a culture and a community. But really, it's a shared set of values and actions and behaviors that make up who you are and how you behave.
And of course, that's exactly why I wanted to ask it, right? Because when you go back and you look and you say to yourself, what does the word culture mean when I'm younger? I love that sort of retrospective look, because as we sit here as adults, we can look through it and we can say to ourselves how that sort of changed, our culture around us. Maybe you grew up in a certain neighborhood that you don't live in now, right? So there would be a change to that culture part of it. But when people use the term culture to describe their business, right? This idea that their business culture is a specific way. What do you see as the most difficult thing about establishing shared values? Like how do you A, get to the point, and B, how do you then bring everyone into that fold? Again, I know that you experience a little bit of this at where you work. I know it's very important for you all. So how does that look from the outside looking in from that perspective?
Yeah, so from the outside, when we're working with dealers and talking about culture and what that looks like to them, same as you, we definitely get pushback. And I think a lot of that is sort of perhaps mindset based. So, oh, we've always done it this way. And in a lot of instances, culture really means a lifestyle. And we're seeing more of this push towards a more welcoming culture in business environments and a more safe and emotionally viable culture in work environments. And when you look at that sort of from the outside, it becomes a matter of how do you demonstrate that to people? So I'm very much in an emotionally safe environment where everybody's able to be themselves and take care of their families and get work done a way that feels good for them. And that's fantastic. And I think in a lot of instances, ownership has a hard time demonstrating that to employees, whether that's because they've been in a vacuum of doing things one way for so long, or they don't know how to demonstrate it. So they could be attempting to say these things that are nice and feel good and what they want, but then lack on the follow through of demonstrating that, or lack on supporting employees that are trying to demonstrate that. So there's a disconnect between the concept and the action most of the time.
Yeah, and I think when you speak to the disconnect, that's really from a dealership perspective, having been in it pretty much my whole adult life. And you hit it right on the head, because the car business, for the most part, as I grew up through it, is a generational business, right? It's passed down. There aren't many legacy businesses left in the world like that, I don't think. And I've always really loved that part of it. I realize now it's going very corporatized and it's much different. But when I grew up in the business, being it that way, I think the younger generation watched the way their folks did business and their folks did business and just said, well, if it works, then it works. But we didn't really keep up with the times there. And so when you say emotionally viable, I think that's always been a car dealer issue, right? If you want to have a real discussion with someone about emotion, car dealerships probably are one of the last places you'd look to have what I'd call a deep conversation. And that's only because we don't try enough. And that's part of what we're doing in our world with Mental Health Mondays. It's not a huge thing, but I am trying to do my part to let people know that it is okay, that it is safe. Whit, when you talk about that word safety to you as an employee, what does that really mean to you? What does that allow you to do when you have safety in where you go and work?
For sure. Good question. So in feeling safe in a work environment, at least for me, that means being able to reach up, reach down, reach sideways, whatever that might be, whether that's same thing, good, bad, ugly. You know, I need help doing this, or I feel lost doing this. Like, can somebody give me guidance? Or even it can be as simple as I'm feeling stuck. I know what I'm doing, but I don't know how to spit it out. Like, can you help me spit it out? Or being able to say, today is a rough day. I'm going to step away and I'm going to come back later and get things done. And knowing that that's truly okay, not just at face value, okay, saying, yeah, but it's okay, but actually knowing and having trust that that security is there, that the people around you believe in you and will rally around you on any of those days.
Yeah, the safe and words matching accent are very important. I used to tell my guys, if you'd come in, a lesson I learned long time ago when I was selling men's clothing in Chicago, a boss I worked for made it very clear that when you step over the curb to work, you leave your personal life behind you and you pick up your work life, and you try to do it both ways to make it, better for you. Well, unfortunately, as I got older, I saw that wasn't really a thing for me, because I take my life and my work with me. It's all one big. It's how I live. It's how I generate my lifestyle. And so for me, that was a difficult thing. But what I did find was when my guys would come in tough, they'd have a rough day. They'd say, you know what, man, go home, regroup, come back tomorrow. Okay. And I meant it when I said it. However, my sales managers, my owners may have said, no, that guy's taking an unnecessary day off, blah, blah, blah. And it gets so like, I've never understood why it mattered if somebody else took a day off and you didn't, or if someone else had a vacation and you didn't, except for the fact that it had to do with misery loves company, I guess, is that if you had to be miserable at work, then so do you and so do I. But I don't think that speaks to safe. So I really like you using that word. Whit, when you picked your job, is it part of why you picked your job? Did you feel that from the onset? Is that something that's developed as you guys have gotten bigger and worked into your culture? Like, it just doesn't feel like safe is something that immediately happens. But can you, if you can, remember kind of how and when you got to that feeling with where you work?
That's complex, because from the outside, I think a lot of companies do sort of present that way. And being at Flex, that was quite apparent coming in from the outside. And I think that's largely to do, with the dealer playbook and all of the things that Michael does to present what our culture is to everybody else. So it can give you an idea from the outside that that's how an organization might be run. But I do think there would be no better way for somebody than to ask people in an organization that they're considering working with truly how they feel, rather than sort of just taking what a posting might say or something like that and going, oh yes, they say they do all of these good things. Okay, great. But then why are there 100 people every day on TikTok saying they had a terrible time playing ping pong at Facebook, right? There's the optics of everything can be so different for everybody. But I think it's really can come from all directions in creating that safety, knowing that being where I am, I want to know that, okay, if I'm not here today, or if I'm on vacation, or I'm gone, or my kid's in daycare, I know that the team is going to be able to hold everything that we need to do together. And I know that from the opposite end, that if I do choose to make a decision like that, I'm trusted that that is an appropriate decision to make. Because I can see why, employers, and especially in the dealership world, where not everybody wants to go to work, or not everybody wants to really be in sales sometimes, or whatever it might be. I can see where people can take that lens and distort it. So, oh, that person is taking a day off, or that person, are they getting their work done? I can sympathize or empathize with both sides of that, because it's a balancing act. You can't quantify feelings, right? You can't quantify being human. So that could be a very delicate line to walk for some people. And I'm sure it really prohibits some people from really pushing on this more lifestyle type culture.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think from an automotive perspective, for me, it was always, we're a 100% commission job. So if you miss a day of work, that doesn't really affect the rest of us. So I always said to guys, look, if you got to miss work, that's your money. We're going to still sell cars. Other guys are going to pick up your slack. Other guys are going to sell the cars. It doesn't really matter to us. I'd rather guys be mentally sound than at work going through the motions, because then you end up burning through customers, which ends up costing us money anyways. And could be bad CSI, could be bad customer experience. It's happened to all of us. You could call into anywhere, you could go into a restaurant, and you can notice the moment someone's having a bad day, right? If your waitress is having a bad day, it is evident from the onset, and you wish someone would have said to her, take the day, like, this is useless, you're not doing us any good. But the employer, because the emotion part, I just don't feel, and I use that term loosely, I don't feel like enough employers are letting people express how they feel. I don't feel like I feel like there's this idea that if you say it and it's something you're thinking, and then all of a sudden that it's taken to this next level. Whit, how do you guys handle it in your team when the people who work for you on your teams come to you with those, let's say, emotional topics? Is it part of you sitting there and working through it? Do you refer it elsewhere? Is there HR? Just give me a little bit of a glimpse into, if I had an issue, if I'm having a bad day with working for you, how do I come to you and how do we work through it?
For sure. So when that's a good question, because it's really the marketer in me comes out, and the strategist in me really comes out with that, where there's never a clear-cut answer for anything. So what is the problem? Why do you feel this way? Is that something I can help you fix? Is it something that time can help you fix? Is it something that you've struggled with before and not been able to fix? Because sort of depending on what caused that, or what is helping you be in this space, the answer or the solution can be really different. So, in talking with different members of our team, sometimes all people need is a second set of ears to work through something to get to the end result that they know is there, and they're struggling to put the pieces together. Or maybe they are having an off day and somebody just needs to shake them and say, go outside, go for a walk, just leave, eat something. Did you drink water today? There's a saying I saw online where it's like, we're houseplants with emotions. And that can be really true sometimes. Sometimes that is all you need. So I can't answer that question because it's so variable or so situational that it just depends. But I think people really, at the end of the day, need to know that they're able to ask those questions and then see what happens. An example from my own experience. So we recently welcomed our second kid to the mix, but we recently welcomed our second kid to the mix 2 months early, super unexpected, not ready on the work front or the life front or anything. So I'm sitting here thinking, my life is exploding. I have no idea what I'm doing. There isn't a handbook for this. And actually, it's the first time something like that had ever happened in our organization. A lot of folks already had their kids before being here, or they don't have kids yet. So me being generally pretty even keeled, I'm sitting here freaking out, my most freaking out moment. And I'm driving home on, day 14 of going back and forth to the hospital. And I called their CEO and I said, I know it is, but I need you to tell me that this is okay. Like I'm here, there, I'm everywhere. I'm working through it, but then I'm also doing this. And I know it's okay, but I need to rehear it. And he was like, dude, it's okay. It's fine. Do your thing. We're going to be here when everything settles. And so sometimes you just need to hear it too and have faith in that.
I think there's a lot to that. And it's funny you said that you couldn't answer the question, but you did answer the question because you answered it with the strategist in you, the digging in. My brother calls it my ability to peel back the layers, right? So I just like an onion. I just sit there and I'm like, yeah, okay, this. All right, but what? Then there's this. Then we ask this. Then we ask this. Then we ask this. My wife hates it about me. Okay, she can't stand it about me because there's never just Sean, give me an answer. It's like, well, hold on. Why do you want this answer? What are we looking for? How did we get here? And she's like, it's a grocery list, you know? And so for me, I do understand. I do appreciate the way you said that because, you know, that's ultimately what we want people to do. You know, recently I've had some people on the show for Mental Health Mondays that have had some really difficult stories to tell, you know, and you sit there and you take these stories on with them and you get done doing what we're doing here today. And I'm sitting at this desk when the cameras are off and I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, you know, the second I thought my life was difficult, frustrating, not what I thought, whatever, the second you can put it in context, right? Like you just did, where you were like, hold on, other people had to have dealt with this. Like, I can't be the only one who had a child unexpected. I can't be the only one. That context is so important. And I think people need to hear it more often than not. And I'm not surprised that your CEO gave you that, you know, reassurance. A, that's the kind of people you are. And B, that's what you hope to find, because as you said when we started, the words have to match the actions. And right then and there, I believe that they do. So when we talk about, we can talk about the emotional side of it, the safety part of it for culture, but let's talk about the productivity side of culture to you, Whit. Where does culture come into productivity, whether it's in the number of meetings, whether it's in what you guys expect, sort of your value system, but what does it do to get people to do the job, be a part of the job? Talk to me about that part of culture.
Yeah, so I think when you're open to exploring different avenues for people to express themselves within that safe culture you created, it allows them to do it their way. We recently, I guess not very recently, probably this year, started using a tool called Volley. It's an app, and it basically is texting but in video format. And the whole point is, their thing is kill meetings, no more meetings ever. And sure, yes, we still have meetings. It's the way it goes. It's okay. But in that, we're able to take people who communicate a lot better verbally than in the written word. So where you might have had a please do this task to somebody, now they can say, what does this mean? Or I'm going to do this. Does that work? Does that make sense? And express their question in a way that works for them. So we've been able to see actually a lot more personality from certain team members that don't get involved as much in the written word because they're more comfortable with that. And same thing, vice versa. Some people are really worried about video or scared of video, whatever it is. And then they might want to resonate more with a different format. So allowing sort of different platforms or different ways of expression has been a huge help for us to getting everybody involved. And same thing with how they work. I mean, we've seen a lot of it. We've always been remote, or a large portion of our team has always been remote. But where so many people are becoming remote now, or have become remote through the pandemic, you're seeing people have different struggles. Like some people want to go back to an office, or some people want to be mobile or want to be face-to-face with people. You know, I'm an introvert, so being here in my office is great because I'm not distracted by something else. But other people will, they could be completely productive silently, but want somebody over there. So being flexible to allow for co-work, or being flexible to allow people to, you know, be on do not disturb so that they can focus, and trusting that they're doing the right thing can really empower everybody to make the choices that work for them. And if they're being productive in their own realm, ultimately that should make your business productive.
Yes. And I got to tell you, you and I are the same. Introvert I am. In my office, I would rather be. I don't leave my house very often for anything, unless I'm going hiking, unless I'm going out and living my life. Other than that, work gets done on the other side of this camera, just on the other side of my office where my other workstation is, and that's it. And that's how I do it. And you do assume people do it. And our whole company always started satellite. There aren't many of us. And so everyone just has always worked from home. It was never a change for us. It was always an overhead thing for me. I hate bills. So when someone's like, yeah, your company needs an office, I'm like, no way. Everyone can work from home. I don't feel like paying for that. And it's just because I thought about what we offer and how we were going to be able to offer it. And I knew that if we started to have expense against the business, we probably weren't going to be able to offer the product at the price point that I wanted to offer it. So I had to make those decisions along the way, and some of them pay off, some of them don't. But I want to say to what you were talking about, Volley, is that right? VOLY, was that the app?
VOLLEY, like a volleyball.
Got it. Just like a volleyball. Cool. I love it. And I want to ask you though, I see you post a lot, but I see you do it in the written word. Now, are you someone that prefers the written word over the video? Because you brought that up, that some people do. But I see you in the public space, I see you do a lot of writing. I don't see you do a ton of videos, the occasional picture, etc. I know I sound like a stalking creep. I have a memory for this in my life. My wife calls me a creep because I remember everything about my neighborhood, who my neighbors are, what cars they drive. I never met them in my life. I don't really care. I just happen to be socially aware to everything. So that's what I see from you. What is your preference as a person?
That's a good question. I think if I had to solely choose one method, it probably would be a written word, because I do well with thinking about something and laying it out in a structure. That I do well with structure, sort of as a general statement. I need a routine. I eat the same thing for breakfast. I sound really boring, but structure does well for me. So if I had to choose one, definitely a written word. But in the same vein, though, I do believe in a certain extent of pushing out of your comfort zone for things that will help you grow. So at the same time, I'm not opposed to video, not opposed to photos, but my wife tends to take the same photo as me, but it looks 80 times better and mine looks like a potato. So sort of, choosing which skill to hone really can be a thing about playing to your strengths.
I totally get it. Hey, look here, you're doing video right now, right? So here we are. This is a video aspect. It's not a written word. I tell people that I speak much better than I write. And so that's just always been my thing. My business partner, who I've known since I was 13 years old, he's someone who the way we started this company was by audio file. I would have a million thoughts a night, and I would just, hours and hours and hours of just mindless thoughts coming out at 2 a.m. Makes zero sense. I'd wake up the next morning and my whole Google Drive would have all the thoughts separated into bubbles, and he would just do this, and he got it because he's a written word guy. I wish he'd pull out our old YouTube videos. We started the company in like 2013. We made like 3 or 4 really weird, kind of off color, weird. We were just weird. We were weird people. We didn't know what we were doing. And it was just he and I in a video, and he literally sat there silent the whole video while I talked. It was just, I wish he'd unearth them. So if you're watching, Jeffrey, you should unearth them and bring them back up. But from a perspective, when you talk about, that communication structure, this idea, how did you get to the idea of Volley? Because I feel like the culture is about the people who sort of sit at the top, right? Because I think they have to demonstrate, as you said. So how did we get to the concept of Volley, and then how do we implement? I'm intrigued by the way corporations go about these decisions, because, as I said, we're a small company that if I want to make something change, I'll change it now. I don't have to go talk to anyone. So I wonder, for you guys, how did you get there, and what were those discussions like?
I wish I had a big philosophical answer to give you, but I don't, because the real answer is like we're a tech company, we're a MarTech company. So marketing and tech, that's what we do. We're a bunch of nerds. It's a requirement. You have to be a little bit nerdy and a little bit strange. And that's cool. That's the way it is. But if we find a tool, whatever type of tool it is that anybody on the team thinks is cool or going to be of value, we try it and see what happens. It's just a toss it in the ring. And if basically what will happen is if it's not that great, it'll just become obsolete by itself. And if it's handy, it will stick around. There's no sort of formula to that most of the time. I mean, obviously if you looked at like accounting or project management, yeah, that's a bigger topic. But for something like this, totally different ballgame.
That's a really cool concept, though, because I don't think a lot of companies believe in it that way, where it's like, hey, let's bring it in, try it, throw it up. If it works, cool. If it don't, we don't have to worry about it. I love also how you speak about the sort of natural sunsetting of any product. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, look, we don't use it anymore. You know, when I started the podcast was all done audio. I never did video. And then so I had a whole audio rig set. Well, when I went to video, I was like, I don't get rid of that app. Like, I don't need this anymore because it's a video driven format. So I think as we mature and grow, I think a lot of that happens with it. But again, I think it speaks to your culture, Whit. I think it speaks to the opportunity that even at a most basic level, yes, we're a marketing tech company, but we're willing to give it a shot. So your teammates, I assume, feel empowered to bring those sort of things forward. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. And there are times, everybody has a lot of ideas. And I think we have done a really good job at making everybody's ideas feel heard. It doesn't mean that you have to try every single idea that comes out. You could spin yourself out 16 different ways, but there's a big difference between saying, okay, Sean, no, and saying, that's a really great idea. I don't know if that makes sense right now, but let's document this to come back to later. Or, maybe Q1 when we're doing X is a better time to do that. Those two things feel really different when you're on the receiving end of them.
They certainly do, because you use the word heard. You use the word heard. When you allow the discussion to come out, you listen to the discussion and you process it and you go, yes, maybe not now. As opposed to, no, and do me a favor, stop bringing those things to my office. And like that, because in our world, in the car business, retail, when I grew up, that's what it was. And I was at the evolution of the internet. So every time I'd see something go wrong in the internet process, I'd be like, guys, this does not make any sense. Like, why am I having to go to the desk and then the desk is having to go to you? Why don't I just go to you? Why don't I just deal with one manager? Why don't I sit? And people would be, Sean, will you just shut up and follow directions? It's like, no, the directions are wrong. The directions are inefficient. And I live a world of efficiency. Okay, Whit, I sound much like yourself. All right. I eliminate a lot of the, I don't take it as far as the Facebook boss there on the gray shirts all in my closet, but I simplify the shit out of my wardrobe. Okay. It's t-shirts and that's pretty much it. I eat the same thing. I try to eat at the same time. I try to do the same things on Tuesday that I do every Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, because it allows me to be efficient. Now, recently, Whit, people have come to me and said, well, you're too much of a perfectionist. That's no way to live. Okay, fine. But it's certainly a way to live for me. Whit, what do you do when you identify people who may not fit the culture? You hire them, as they said to you, you said to them, you have a great culture. They love great culture. But as you said, only when you get going can you really know. What happens when there's an egg that doesn't sit like the rest of the eggs in the culture bin? What now do we do?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've been very fortunate that our core team has remained very true to everything that has been there since day one. Whether they're newer members of our team or not. And what we've seen is that same sort of concept of a natural sunsetting, where if somebody doesn't sort of fit in, they will almost select themselves out. And I think part of that probably does come down to, if you're surrounded by 10 people on a team that all do things one way or behave with this specific level of integrity, if you're the sort of odd duck out, you'll probably feel that. You'll probably seek out another opportunity that resonates with your core values. So there's no formula really, I believe, for that. We try to help everybody as much as we can so that they do feel empowered and safe to make mistakes and welcomed, and that they have the tools that they need. But it is okay if somebody is not a great fit. If you're going to be a toxic member that sort of can't be put through the Brita filter, that's going to happen. I think in any organization, no hiring process is perfect. I'm sure that there are people out there who think it is, but it happens very naturally, where you don't, at the point of a hard discussion, there's no hard discussion to have.
See, now that's interesting. I asked it because in the car business, we have a situation where we have producers, right? As I said to you before, we're 100% commission business. So you have people who produce big numbers, but follow zero rules, follow zero processes, follow zero cultural concepts, follow 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. They do it for themselves. That's what they're here for. Now, as owners of businesses, we've struggled to say, Yes, but I've never liked saying it. I always argued with owners who say, Sean, yeah, but he does this. No, yeah, but. Here's the yeah, but. Yeah, but he doesn't do what everyone else does. That's the yeah, but I want from you, not who he is. Do you run into that on your end of someone who has a potential of being a very high producer, but may do things their way, not in accordance with your way? Or is that something more you think, I don't want to say specific to the card business, but maybe more specific to a heavy sales org where you guys are sort of a mixture of both?
Yeah, I would say it does fall more to sales heavy business where we're more inbound and sort of outbound sales. There was a really great episode, I believe it was, that Glenn Lundy had Alfredo Flores as a guest speaker. I would have to dig to find out, what number it was or anything like that. But he was speaking to how he got into a new store and it encountered exactly that situation where the team was great, but then there was the one guy that was the rotten egg that sold everything. And the long and the short of it was that he said, no, I don't care that this guy's selling everything. He's hurting everybody around him. And at that point they cut ties, and that was that. And the store was better off for it. And there's probably more nuance than I'm really explaining, not having been there. But I think the crux of it was that with that toxic piece gone, it allowed everybody else to rise more to their true potential without feeling that, fear of comparison or fear of stepping out in a different way.
I think that's really important, and I want everyone to hear that. And if you can, Whit, between now and when the episode goes live, if you find it, feel free to drop it in the comments for folks to see. I know some people don't like other podcasts being dropped in their podcast. I do not care. So if you find out something that we were talking about that the audience can go back and reference, I would love that to be the case. But the toxic piece is important to me. And it's something that I say all the time to people, that if you're going to hire my owners that we have as clients that we deal with, if you're going to hire a new general manager, you need to hire them with the ability to have the autonomy to do everything that they want to do to run the store. If you hire them and trust them, if they do want to get rid of the parts counter guy because he's just negative as it gets, or he does want to move on from a sales guy, you have to allow him to do that. And I've had owners say, no. Then I'm like, well, then don't hire that guy. Like, then you should hire a yes man. If that's what you're looking for, then hire. But this dude that you're looking to hire, after sitting through the interviews with him, he's legit. He wants to do shit his way. You don't sound on board with that. So you're just going to hire someone to fire a GM to make his life miserable. Don't do that. And I think it's important people have those. That's an honest discussion. I don't know what's so wrong about it. I think if you are really going to have better culture, you must have really hard discussions. Would you agree with?
I do think so. Emotions can be hard, and I think a lot of people are afraid of being really open with those emotions. And I don't know if that's just an insecurity piece. I mean, I'm sure I've experienced it where I've had a hard time communicating exactly how I'm feeling or really understanding why. And then maybe you get to it later, and that's great. But in those moments, if you know based on your past experience that a certain initiative will work and you fight for that and it's not heard, that's damaging in an entirely different way to that GM that knows, I know super for certain exactly this is going to work, and then I'm not allowed to do it. That's tough. Then you're stifling this other person's sort of, power and autonomy. So I don't think there's a right answer to that, but I think it's very important to make sure that everybody feels trusted to execute on the decisions that they're responsible for.
Yeah, and I just wish that people would be more upfront when they're, looking to hire people and they're moving their families and they're doing these things. I wish in our business, car business, retail, I wish there would be more of those discussions. Before we started Car Biz, I was taking the direction of fulfilling a childhood dream and owning a store. And so I was working with people to do that. And my business partner now would have been my business partner then, because he still has the same abilities that I don't, his organization, his ability to write, keep things straight. That's his deal. I'm more of a front man, but we were going into these discussions, right? And I this was 2013, and I'm like, look, everybody needs an iPad. Everything's got to be done on the lot. I need Wi-Fi everywhere. I need the farthest into the dealership and the farthest back to I need this, I need this, I need that. And it was like, hold on a second. You think you're going to come to our store and do all this stuff? I said, yeah. Why would you hire me? Why would you partner? Why would you take my truckload of money to try and buy in here if you weren't going to let me do this? It's like, well, I thought you were just going to do what we've been doing. well, what you've been doing sucks, which is why you called me. So I don't understand. Why do we want to keep? And thankfully, he was like, I'm never going to let you do that. Well, thank God you said that, because I'm not going to do business. I'm not going to do this. And it was like, oh, well, why? Well, because you were going to hire me for my thought process, for what I was, for who I was, but you weren't going to allow me to do it. So owners and GMs, I stress to you, if you aren't going to give the hire that you believe is the hire the ability to make the change need to be made, then don't hire them, because it's a waste of everybody's time. It's just not fair. Whit, you've been more than gracious with your time. As we sort of kind of take this down a little bit, speak to me about how you think, because I know you have recent thoughts on the dealership world and sort of culture in general. What should folks do to take the steps to improve or change culture? Whit, in your opinion, I'm not talking about overnight. I mean, really, what does it take to start to try and make a change at your dealership, at your business, around the word culture?
I think the biggest thing, if I think to the dealers that we have seen demonstrate this very well, or perhaps really strongly, is leading by example in all of the actions that people take. So if I think to, I was chatting with one of our Ford clients, and he said it was an ownership meeting. So all of the sort of key players on their team were meeting with our team, and one of their members was missing. And that's okay, cool, it happens. But he reached out to me later and he said, hey, I'm so sorry I couldn't make it. I know that was important, but I was meeting with, I can't remember what team member he said, but he's like, she just lost a family member and she was having a really hard time. So I was, helping her feel, helping her feel better, helping console her and things like that. And I think that's a really strong example of how you can lead by example. So he was doing exactly what he should have been doing in that moment. Yeah, he wasn't worrying about marketing in that moment. That's okay. I mean, don't forget it overall. That would be crazy. But he was caring for his team. And I think when you lead by example, that facilitates those feelings of safety and those feelings of loyalty that people have, where this specific dealer I'm mentioning, every single thing they do is driven as if they're an entire family. Every action that they take is caring for their community, caring for their team, and caring for their own families. And that's what comes first. But you can tell that from the outside because they're leading by example. So it doesn't matter who on their team is taking an action, whether it's the very literal owner or sales guy B, detailer C, they're all acting in a way that aligns with their core values.
It's where people feel like they own your business, that's how they act, as if it's theirs, right? And they take that sort of stewardship over things. It's important that they feel that way. And that's why I always made a point as a general manager. I walk from the back of the dealership through to the front every single morning and every single night on my way out to be able to speak with those folks, say, hey, what's up? How's today? Just to make it where there is no sort of, oh, well, he's got the glass office. Like, no. Kick the doors in, do whatever you have to do to get here. I think that's extremely, extremely valuable. Whit, my last question for you as it really pertains to the culture side of things is, when you look at culture, would you say it is probably the most difficult thing for a business to change from anything else? I mean, if you really wanted to do it, I don't want people to get the idea that culture is something that, as long as my managers do this, then we should be fine. Like, there is more to it, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would put culture and process sort of both up there as two very difficult things to change. And I think a lot of that is fear-based, right? People don't know what they haven't experienced. So they'd rather stick with the status quo than change it for fear that it might not be better. And very rarely is that the case. But no, if you just do action A, that doesn't just flow, but it is definitely hard to change. And it's not something that people can change overnight. And I mean, at face value, like, we see the same thing with running SEO. SEO doesn't change overnight. Culture doesn't change overnight. And we're a very impatient industry as a whole. It's a very hustle hard, close the deal, boom, boom, boom to the desk and you're done sort of concept. And pulling out of that mentality can be really tricky for people. It's a leap of faith. So no, it's not going to be an overnight change, but if you believe in the power of culture that you've seen other organizations demonstrate, then take lead from them and take a leap of faith, knowing that there's the potential that you could come out on the other side of it better, with a happier team, with a better impact on the people around you.
I think you speak to the biggest part right there, 30-day cycle. We live in a 30-day cycle in the car business. It is yes. Today is November 2nd. We're already a day behind whatever our goals were for the month of November. So I totally understand that. It's something that I try to implore to my clients, both looking at their data and having those discussions is, guys, we got to be longer view than this. If we live in a 30-day cycle, we'll drive ourselves nuts. We've got to worry about January now. What are we pacing for? Who do we have? Are we going to need to promote? Is there a store acquisition? These bigger picture items need to be demonstrated. So Whit, you nailed it on the head today. We're talking about safety, feeling like you can say and be yourself at a business is a huge part. Culture doesn't change based on fear. And I think you're right about that. I think people are afraid of what they don't know. And lastly, you need to stick with it, folks. You cannot, and I'm going to say this just because Whit already brought it up for SEO. I'm a big believer in SEO. SEO is 6 months, folks. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. It isn't 3 months. It definitely isn't 30 days. If you're going to spend money with someone for 30 days on SEO, I recommend you walk outside on a windy day with that money, throw it in the air, and see how much you can grab back, because that's your best bet on seeing a return of SEO in 30 days. Okay. It's just not how it operates. Whit, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for being the lead off to what we hope is a tremendous season here on the Car Biz Chronicles.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm excited to see everybody else.
It's going to be great. And so am I as we work through the rest of the roster. Whit, where can folks find you if they want to follow more, hear more from you?
By all means, on every single platform, you can find me at Whit Norrad, Norrad, or on LinkedIn's probably a good bet as well. Same name.
Excellent. All platforms. Thank you again, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Next week on the show, well, you're going to have to just wait and find out. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Episode 2 coming up next week. Thanks a lot and enjoy your week, everybody.